Kevin Rudd came out in favour of a big Australia. That was back in 2009, and it provoked a storm of protest and furious debate over the pros and cons of population growth. Since then, there's been little discussion of the subject, and meanwhile, Australia's population has grown by almost 5 million in 15 years and continues to grow at one of the fastest rates in the developed world. Sometime this year, we're expected to hit 24 million citizens. And while we're having more babies, the numbers are mostly made up of new immigrants. Spending on health, housing, transport and education is not keeping up. And one of Australia's leading think tanks says it's time for a new national debate on the population question. Karen Percy has the story.
Australia needs population. Numbers are good. Numbers are necessary.
Without immigration, the future of the Australia we know will be both uneasy and brief.
Dad's taking me to Australia. He says that's the best place for me to get on in life.
You too can go to Australia for £10. Inquire now to
Australia, a great place for families.
We will decide who comes to this country.
I actually believe in a big Australia.
Everyone has got to be on Team Australia. You don't migrate to this country unless you want to join our team.
Up to train arriving platform 5.
For a nation built on immigrants, Australia hasn't always been comfortable with newcomers. Yet in 2015, Australia ranks third in population growth amongst rich nations, and it's outsiders who are driving that growth.
I have been quite shocked at our rate of growth relative to others in the OECD. I'd always thought that our rate of growth was pretty similar to, say, the US or Canada, for that matter. But since the global financial crisis, migration levels have slowed down to those countries.
For security reasons, please do not leave.
In the 15 years since 2000, migration numbers to Australia have outstripped those seen in the 1950s, 60s and 70s combined.
Population is growing far faster than people realise. Around 400,000 people per year means we're building a city the size of Canberra effectively every year. 4 million people per decade.
And the makeup of these new Australians is changing too. Chinese and Indians are set to catch up with Britons in dominating our migrant pool. As of the close of business today, March 25th, Australia's population is 23,788,061, and it's growing by one person every 1 minute and 18 seconds. In the next 46 years, that's expected to rise to at least 40 million. Dr. Richard Dennis from the progressive think tank The Australia Institute is challenging leaders to take a clear position on population growth in Australia.
Every new citizen is a new taxpayer. That's good for the budget on the revenue side. But every new citizen is someone who deserves the same quality services that we have, or indeed we don't want more people using the same number of hospitals or the same number of trains. So I think politicians are just taking the easy way out.
Melbourne is the fastest growing capital city. Between 2003 and 2013, more than 700,000 people moved here. The suburb of Melton, 35 kilometres from Melbourne CBD, is one of the country's new migrant hotspots.
Train arriving on platform 1 is the 11:42 service to Ballarat.
The population here has doubled in the past decade. About a quarter of the 130,000 residents were born overseas.
The reaction has always been to have a hostile view of these migrants are taking our jobs, these foreigners are coming into our land, we've got less because they have more. And I think what needs to be, in order to unravel that, we need to have a conversation from our leadership and from planners that articulates back. This is not a racial issue, this is a structural issue.
Newlyweds Lakesh Sharma and Vidhu Paul moved to Melton 4 months ago. They're expecting their first child in September. Lakesh drives to his job as a forklift operator, but in their part of Melton, the lack of local public transport is a problem for Vidhu.
I'm not driving. I don't have the license here. So I'm dependent on my husband or any other person to shop for shopping or anything outside my house. I'm dependent on others right now.
Over here we haven't got any public transport, but in future, as I have spoken to the council and our developers as well, so in future there will be some public transport.
The Melton City Council is dealing with more than 130 new families a month.
Just got off the phone and the appliances will be here for Thursday, so...
And that's why Mary Ann Ward has decided to set up her cafe here to offer something for the mums and dads of the 42 new babies delivered here each week.
It's affordable living. You can buy your beautiful brand new home, where we've got a brand new library. There's a lot to offer in Melton, and everyone can have the best of all worlds, basically.
Melton's infrastructure is coping with its new residents so far.
We are a large country. We have the capacity to move outward, but infrastructure has to be resourced adequately so that when families and communities start to live on the outer areas of Melbourne, they're not isolated due to lack of access to resources, to internet, to access to technology, to good schools, to hospitals.
Our concern is that government spending on health and education isn't keeping up with the very rapid population growth that those governments are striving for.
In New South Wales, for example, budget papers show per capita spending will fall over the next 4 years, from $9,000 to $8,700 per person. Across the country, governments are engaged in a budget tug-of-war, balancing need and political priorities. Experts like Bernard Salt say it's time to rethink urban planning, in particular how and where services are provided.
I think that discussion would lead to, well, we need more infrastructure, public transport, we need more freeways, but we also need to think about how to make our cities more livable. And this is my idea of creating what I call multi-nucleated cities. So you don't just have one CBD, you have 6 or 7 CBDs, and people live, work, play, recreate all within the local area.
As a nation, Australia has big global aspirations, but a small population can only achieve so much.
I don't think where people come from is the main thing. I think it's how we treat them and whether our governments are investing in a plan to house them, to educate them, and to fully integrate everybody into what I think is a great country.
Karen Percy reporting.